With the midterms less than 3 weeks away, the Biden administration on Monday announced it was notifying 8 million student loan borrowers, telling them that they are being automatically considered for up to $20,000 in student debt cancellation. Well, today, as we mentioned, President Biden announced that he plans to release 15 million more barrels of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Now, is it just me, or doesn't this look like a political bribe? I mean, it sure looks political. Of course, the president denies that.
It's not politically motivated at all. It's motivated to make sure that I continue to push on what I've been pushing on, and that is making sure there's enough oil that's being pumped by the companies so that we have the ability to be able to produce enough gas that we need here at home, oil we need here at home, and at the same time, keep moving in the direction of providing for alternative energy. That's what I've been doing. Now, the problem is these guys are asleep. I don't know where they've been.
You know, it wasn't a problem before he came into office and began to push all of these policies, making it difficult to drill for oil and process. Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is Congressman Mark Green. He's a member of the House Armed Services Committee, the House Foreign Affairs Committee, the House Freedom Caucus, and the GOP Doctors Caucus. He represents the 7th Congressional District of Tennessee. Dr. Green, welcome back to the program.
Well, thanks for having me, Tony. I always enjoy being with you.
Is it fair to describe what President Biden is doing by tapping into the Strategic Petroleum Reserve right before the elections, when his policies have driven up gas prices, that this is a political bribe?
Absolutely. I mean, no one in their right mind, or no one who's at least fair, is going to assume for a second that this is in response to the current crisis at the pump, right? I mean, this is clearly buying votes. It's just like the college loan thing. I mean, it's just buying votes. That's what it is. And 15 million barrels is not going to make hardly a dent in the price of gas at the pump, but it will make a massive dent in what is already the lowest level that our strategic reserve has been in at least 4 decades. My team has come up with at least 4 decades. So we're basically sacrificing the security of the country so he can buy votes, and it's horrific.
Yeah, to put this in perspective, from the standpoint of OPEC, they're cutting 2 million barrels per day. So we're talking about trawling out 2 weeks worth of oil to offset OPEC from the strategic reserves. But as you pointed out, everything I've seen suggests you're absolutely right. It's for a 4-decade low. Now, explain the purpose for the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Why is it there?
Yeah, we have a Strategic Petroleum Reserve for times of war and for serious weather events when there's a compromise to the supply. A great example was the Colonial Pipeline. You know, when that stopped the flow, you know, that's the kind of times when the strategic oil reserve should be used. And this president's using it to win an election.
So those factors considered, are we not living in a volatile time where we have war going on in Europe? We've got China that is doing a lot of saber rattling. Is it possible that our military might be called upon in the near future where they would need a steady supply of fuel?
Very clearly, the world situation is fraught with risk, mostly because of the weakness of this president. You know, the withdrawal from Afghanistan really solidified in Putin's mind that he could act. And how we respond to Putin is impacting now Xi Jinping. And you look, his comments at the Party Congress is probably the most bellicose he's ever been about Taiwan. He's made a promise he's going to do it in his lifetime. His credibility at home is at stake. So it's, you know, to take our oil reserve down to the lowest it's been in 4 decades is the most, well, it's probably the second most irresponsible national security decision this president's made. The first is the vaccine mandate, which is depleting the force. And they did it on the notion of readiness, but they have destroyed readiness with the vaccine mandate. It's just, I mean, everything that you would think you wouldn't do is what this president has done.
You could not be more intentional, I think, in tearing down our military and its readiness.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to talk about that in a moment, because the Heritage Foundation has put out their annual index on the military, and it's quite alarming. But I want to go back to your comment on China, because even the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, says that based on what he's seeing, he made this comment on Monday at Stanford University. He said it looks as if the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, is moving forward to seize Taiwan on a faster timetable. So even the administration acknowledges that there's a greater risk here, but there appears to be no planning for such an event to occur.
Well, there's a lot of things going on at the Pentagon to prepare for it. There are plans in place. There are supply and resupply plans in place. A big part of the Ukraine thing taught us we needed to build up certain reserves of weapons, particularly javelins and stingers, things like that. So we have, in that $40 billion package that went to Ukraine, that everybody talks about all of that going to Ukraine, that's not accurate. A big part of it is to do just that, build the industrial supply up so we can produce more javelins and stingers and things like that. But the readiness piece, that you mentioned, and I think I mentioned too, with the vaccine mandate, that is, they're basically ignoring it. Blinken's comment, though, is almost self-admission that it's their own weakness that's caused this, increase in the timeline for Xi Jinping. Because look, in two years and some change, there'll be a different president, and it'll be a Republican, and Xi knows he's not going to be able to get away with it then. So clearly they're the reason that the timeline is being moved forward, and it's just weakness.
So you think that we could see a move by China in the next 2 years?
Look, I wouldn't put it past them. Their window will close with a Republican president. So they've got to know that.
Do you think this administration will respond if China makes a move on Taiwan?
Well, you have to give the administration credit for its ambiguity, because nobody knows what they're going to do, right? I mean, Biden says, "Oh, we'll send troops," and then they walk that back, and so that certainly creates a degree of ambiguity, because they themselves can't say the same thing. And they keep correcting what they're saying. So, I mean, who knows what the administration will do? And I guess in a sense that is a positive, because Xi Jinping doesn't know what they're going to do.
All right. Well, on the other side of the break, Congressman, we're going to talk about the readiness of the military and its weaknesses and how those can be corrected. Let's talk military readiness. You serve on the House Armed Services Committee. You're talking about the vaccine mandate and how that's messing up both our retention as we're driving healthy people out of the military, and the Army's missing its recruiting goal, which I think is connected. They missed it by about 15,000 soldiers this year. The Heritage Foundation recently gave our military its first ever assessment as weak. Do you think that's accurate? And if so, how worried should we be about a weakened military?
I don't want to use the word weak myself. Tony, I think we still have a very capable force, but it's just, the question of whether or not it can contend with the threats that are out there it's good to question that. When you think of an Army that had expected to be 15,000 stronger than it is, when you think about 62,000 guardsmen who can't deploy because of the vaccine mandate, you add that together, just those two sources alone attrit the force 77,000 people. And that is horrific to think of a military that was expecting to have 77,000 people in the ranks and now doesn't. I mean, readiness has clearly been significantly impacted by this vaccine mandate. And we all know that this age group, very minimal effect on them. I mean, there are the isolated persons who have a negative outcome, and that's horrible. But the readiness of the force is far more drastically impacted by the mandate.
So, but let me ask you about that, Dr. Green, because we now have more information. You know, we're 2 years out from this event, and even, you know, there's now admissions by Pfizer that it does not, the vaccine does not stop the spread of the virus. I mean, there's some contention over that. But as you said, this age group was not disproportionately in any form or fashion hurt by this this virus. So why are we doing this? Can't we rethink this? Hey, wait a minute. All right. So we thought, based upon what we had before, this was a good idea. But now, based on what we know, it's not a good idea, so we're pulling back.
Yeah, it's a terrible idea. Okay, it is decimating the force. Can we pull back? Of course we could. We could very easily, and we've sent multiple letters to the administration saying, stop the mandate, reinstate those who have been discharged. Fortunately, and thank God for this, the Democrats agreed to let my amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act go through that allowed for at least an honorable discharge. They were really seriously considering dishonorable discharges for these individuals who'd served the nation, who'd fought close to retirement. They're kicking them out. Just unbelievable that they would even think that. But look, they cancel people over what they think and say. So I guess we should expect it from this bunch. But very clearly, it makes no sense. It can be reversed, and it should be reversed immediately.
I'm going to go back to the state of our nation's military, because in the Heritage Foundation report, they break it down by service. Army, they rate them as marginal in terms of their strength and preparation, their readiness. The U.S. Army is aging faster than it is modernizing, receiving an overall marginal rating. The Navy, they rate as weak. They say because they're declining from actually a marginal rating in 22, pointing out the fact that our competitors are quickly narrowing the technology gap. Then we have the Marine Corps actually strong, saying they've actually compromised some of their size for quality and updating their equipment and material. The Air Force very weak because of aging aircraft, and poor pilot training. And retention continues to downgrade the ability of the Air Force. Does that sound like it's somewhat on track?
Well, it certainly matches the level of wokeness and the length of time that the organizations have been woke, because the Air Force is the most woke, and it's been the most woke for the longest.
So are you saying there's a trade-off then as we pursue, and this is what the Secretary of the Army said is not happening, that we're not compromising training and readiness for what she says, I can't define it because I really don't know what it is, but we're not being woke?
Look, there was a study done of the United States Navy by a retired three-star admiral, and they looked at this. This was shortly after the crashes at sea where two ships ran into one another, and they concluded that there was far too much training on woke stuff. And look, if it's about diversity over, and you make the decision that you're going to hire somebody simply because of the color of their skin or their ethnicity, and not competence, you're immediately sacrificing competence of the military for something else. Now, granted, I'm all for doing everything we can to advance a diverse force, but we have to have the very best military, and you can't make the decision at the cost of the other. You have to do your best to ensure that people are made capable for the job. And so that's what diversity should be, is empowering everyone to be successful. But they're making decisions where they sacrifice competence for filling quotas, and it is harming the force.
But you can only have one top priority, and the military's priority should be to fight and win America's wars. So we need to be prepared for that.
That's exactly right.
And all of these other things, they may have merit, as you've pointed out, but they should be secondary in their focus. And I don't think that's what's happening.
Yeah, and it's honestly, look, if you select, I love Martin Luther King for what he said, It should be character, not the color of our skin. And I just spent all day yesterday with Alveda King, who came to campaign for me in my district. And she says the same thing.
Right.
Critical race theory is racist.
Yeah.
Because it basically divides us and tells us to hate one another. How do you run a military when you're telling the members of the military that America's horrible? Hey, go defend this terrible racist country.
Excellent point. Excellent point. I hope the Republicans can help change that after the next election. All right, Congressman, we're out of time. Always great to see you. Thanks for being with us today.